Deb Boyson, and welcome to The Architecture of Health. And this week, my guest is Bam Lionheart, the founder of Primal Movement. He is a movement coach who helps restore the primal possibilities of having a pain-free life and a playful, pain-free athleticism that a lot of us in the modern world have given up on. And his website is primalmovement.org. So Bam, I'm so glad to have you here. You've inspired me. I see you on social media. I've taken some of your classes. Welcome to my show.
I'm super excited to be here, Deb. Thanks for having me.
And Bam, one of the reasons you stand out to me is that you shared your story about this awakening you had to the possibility of being able to move better than most modern people would ever imagine. And part of it is I was going through this awakening myself where my hips were failing because a lot of the biomechanics of my walking were off, and then it was getting even worse when I tried to run. So can you tell me, you told me about applying for special ops, being a super athletic guy, and then realizing you were, quote, running backwards.
Yes. So I was really keen on joining the Air Force Special Operations, and they have a pretty big laundry list of physical demands on what they want you to be capable of. These physical requirements are different than, let's say, the general fitness requirements. I realized that there were some really big gaps in my physical capabilities. And I recognized these gaps at the time was a competitive Olympic weightlifter, was doing anywhere from maybe 6 hours of jujitsu or mixed martial arts training. I was running my own strength conditioning gym, so was doing at least one of my workouts every single day. A majority of my life I spent exercising in a traditional fitness manner with resistance training, and then on top of that was really competitive Olympic weightlifting and doing martial arts training. And when I started to apply the model of what this special operations gave me, which is very locomotive based, running for long distances, swimming for long distances. Swimming, I could do no problem. Was a top five performer. Calisthenics, no problem. Top five performer. But then when it came to the run, I was in the bottom five and was struggling to meet the time requirements, struggling to train for running because of shin splints, because of feeling low back tightness in my hips. This came like it was like a huge shock to me because I was in the gym all the time. And yet when I go to the track, I feel like I'm brand new to movement. And my friends would tell me, when you run, Bam, something is wrong. It just doesn't look right. And I'm like, I know it doesn't feel right. People could tell me like, you just look stiff, or maybe you look like your hips are tight, but from a traditional strength conditioning movement mindset, or if like I saw a PT, they'd be like, man, your dorsiflexion and your hip mobility is off the charts. Long story short, came to find a running coach, Jose Bosch, who was actually just a movement coach, and showed me that instead of moving in a natural way to propel myself forward, I was what you could call moving in reverse forward. Like when you're swimming, there's a very big energy direction for me to move backwards in the pool, swimming backwards, and there's a very big energy pull for me to pull myself forward, which is usually like more of this out to in type of thing. If you think of a butterfly stroke, the arms are coming from the very outside, and then we dive to the inside, and then we push out, release, and in. So there's very much this pressure system that allows us to generate power forward with both of our arms, both of our legs, and also on a single leg type of thing. Because majority of the time that I was exercising and pushing my body, I was doing weightlifting, like Olympic weightlifting or CrossFit type of things, which was in a vertical plane, pressing up. When you're grabbing a barbell, there's almost like a leaning back, and the feet, the knees, and the hips start to open, and the hips start to press forward, like in a thrusting, what some would call triple extension, to really exploit the bar going up so that you can get underneath it. Yes. And so I had spent so much time going up with my movement, getting strong going up, that when I went to go run, I looked like Mario. It was like wing, wing. It was just all this up and down. And there was not a lot of lateral or forward energy being directed. So the harder that I tried to run, the more stiff that my body looked, and the slower that my times got.
And
So
then you're
because of
talking
that,
about forces getting put through the body in a way that we aren't designed to recycle those forces. Like it's running interference on a lot of our design.
yeah. So for instance, the challenge was 1.5 miles, and they wanted you to do it. I think it might have been sub 10 minutes. Um, and when I first started, it was a little like 11:13 was what I was running at, which was atrocious. So when I started looking at my movement and not even running and just changing the way that my body moved in a gait cycle, it went from 11:13 to 10:40. From 10:40, it rolled down to 10, and then it was sub 10, 9:30, and then low nines at the very end. So a huge transformation, but I did have to really look at how am I moving forward? How am I running? And correct that. Just like every movement has its own technique, its own way. And Olympic weightlifting, swimming, everything, they have a special signature and pattern. And if you don't know that signature and pattern, then it becomes extremely inefficient. Some people just say, oh, I'm just not a good runner, or I'm just not a good whatever it is. But it's because you haven't really understood how to navigate efficiently in those movement patterns. Once you learn those movement patterns, not only does it become more enjoyable, you become more efficient. Your chances of becoming injured get way, way, way less. I had done up to that point just about everything that I could do besides running. I went into the fighting world. I went into gymnastics world. I went into climbing, rock climbing world. I went into CrossFit world. I went into Olympic weightlifting. I went into yoga world. I went into more movement culture, Ido Portal world. And all of those worlds, I thought that everything was available to me from a movement perspective. But running was the biggest challenge, and still is the biggest challenge to my movement today. And so no amount of looking for solutions in one world could fix but the work that I had in front of me.
So I have a question about that because a lot of people like me that gravitate towards things like yoga or dance. We're very hyper focused on this frontal plane, splatting ourselves wide to be seen and not so good at just spirals to move forward. And that often results in also a lot of hip damage because then the hip joints are locked in this external rotation too much. And at one point I found Esther Clay and Primal Posture, which helped. But then I still, even after training hours a day doing a few of those methods you're talking about, someone measured my tensegrity and said it was, quote, hot pizza cheese. And that no wonder I couldn't run forward, and I'm still working on it. But what's your philosophy as far as the importance of unlocking forward locomotive patterns?
It's a great question. If I could go back and do it again, all of my training that I would have started with this, the forward moving ability, which is walking, running, swimming, climbing, and mastered those. If I have children in the future, that's going to be a main priority and focus. Just being exposed to that at an early age. In terms of why I would do that is because it's my belief and many others that our ability to move forward, walking and running, is the primary function of our human body and movement. It is what we are designed to do. There's no question or there's no doubt like why when we do go and continue to walk and we continue to run in the pursuit of doing those things really well, that health, longevity, and strength come to our body naturally. It is running and walking is the thing that we all have to do, but it's almost so apparent that we forget about it. But
It's so obvious. It's so
but
obvious. Yeah. But it's not.
imagine doing anything where you can't walk.
I've been there. I've been there with my hypermobile hips. That's why I call myself yoga survivor. I'm so hypermobile from flattening
Hmm.
myself to big, wide, knees open butterflies in yoga, stretching and deeper back bends. I did not understand at all that I was moving away from my primary movement till my hips started to go.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now I'm much more keen to watch how people walk through space. And it's so much more fall management than it is this regenerative, easy, flowing event. And that's one thing I learned from you is actually you and Born to Run. Running could actually feel quite lovely.
Hmm. Yeah. Just like swimming. If you don't know how to swim and you try to swim, it is extremely aggressive. You're very scared. You're not sure if you're going to drown. But if you learn how to swim very well and efficiently, it becomes one of the most relaxing things. The same with running and walking. The difference is that we don't swim to the grocery store. We don't swim to the bathroom. We walk to the bathroom. We walk to the grocery store. So how you walk throughout your life or run when it is necessary, it would behoove everybody for that walk to not only to be really efficient, you're not causing excess tension, excess damage to your joints, but also to be an experience where this just feels so good to be able to get up and to go on a walk, or just to walk to the grocery store. It doesn't feel laborious. It doesn't feel like I'm picking up my legs and I'm really dragging myself through life. Walking and running can be something that is such an easy and efficient thing for us to do because the body is designed for those. It's very obvious that our body is designed to move forward. If we took the front muscles of the body, like if we filleted the quads, the front of your thighs, if we took the rectus abdominis, the six pack ab muscles, the pec muscles, the front of our delts, maybe even the front of our necks, if we filleted all those muscles and hung them up on a hanger, and then we went to the backside and we took off the glutes, the hamstrings, the calves, the lats, the spinal erectors, the posterior shoulders, the back of the neck, and then hung those up. Those two hangs of meat would be dramatically different in size and in weight than one another. And so one of the big faults that we get in our head is like have good posture. And when people think of posture, they think of just standing up straight, like a straight up tower. But if we were designed to stand up straight, just like a tower, then it would make sense that the front side and the back side would be equal in weight and muscularity in terms of size so that we could have a verticality about ourselves. But we're not. Almost double the mass is on the back side. And why is that? Well, because those are the muscles that really work to propel us forward and keep us in this forward moving body. And so it's a very different but very helpful change when I'm thinking of my posture as not like a statue, as a just upright vertical person, but my posture as something that is fluid and is moving originates from the backside, and my posture propels me forward.
So tell me how does that affect the way you approach restoring our design?
Most of the clients that I work with fall into the trap of standing up really straight. Or they've been told to do that. And what actually happens is that in order to stand up straight, the first thing is pushing the hips forward into the space in front of you and then pulling your shoulders back. Anyone listening can kind of imagine stand up straight, think soldier, hips go forward and shoulders go back. If you look at this posture from the side, it actually isn't straight up and vertical. What it is a banana body where the genitals or the front of the hip is the furthest most protruding thing from your standing posture. So it really stuck with a hip thrust where people squeeze and clench their glutes together, which closes off their backside, kind of compresses the SI joint and thrusts them forward. And this causes a whole host of problems if somebody is standing in this way. And it's one of the biggest things that we have to overcome with the clients that I work with, restoring their posture and their movement, because this posture can be extremely compressive on the front of the hips, on the low back, on the SI, and causes upstream problems where the head follows suit of the hips by drifting forward. We think tech neck, we think pain in the back of the neck, pain in the top of the shoulders, and then the shoulders also start to round and go forward, following suit of the hips. And then we get excess tension in the front of the pec minor, in the front of the delt, and then we get kind of just locked into the front side type of thing. And that's why when we think about posture, it feels like work. I have to hold something. If you have to hold your posture like it feels like work, then we haven't yet arrived at what your posture is in its totality. It should be something that is an alignment that makes you feel like you can just
Breathe
breathe and
and
relax.
feel supported and springy at the same time, supported
Yes.
with possibility and stability. And that's one of the mindsets I've had to work through, where I get this idea that stability is rigid. No, stability is a well-tensioned system that can react but doesn't collapse. Yeah.
Correct.
And one other thing, when I had starting 25 years ago, when I was studying with Esther Goklay's peer Jean Couch, and Noel Perez did this job of studying when is it recorded in our history that this hips thrust forward event started to happen. And it was when, around the same time as mass media, where the models were sticking their hips forward, and this mindset, and of course, industrialized lifestyle went from moving all the time to sitting more, but it's also a mindset of projecting in front, like whether it's the future or it's the front side of my body. Yeah. So it sounds like that's the most common pattern you see, is people standing is this locked pelvis stuck forward. And that's the first thing you start unwinding.
That would be the first thing, is getting people to reconnect with the backside of their body and to know what it feels like to engage that.
What other things, strategies do you use for that?
Getting the foot and ankle to be strong and those arches to be maintained. So again, the standing posture that we get a lot of times gets programmed into us, like you said, from mentality, but also from excessive sitting. Anyone can think about sitting for a long time, or like how you sit in a couch. Your hips are way far in front of your shoulders and the top of your head. Maybe in the very beginning, you start sitting with your hips back and your shoulders, chest, and head in front, but eventually you fall into the slouch position, which is if we take the slouch position standing up, turns into the banana body, or the standing slouch.
Standing slouch, yes.
The standing slouch. So if we reconnect somebody to the back side of their body and their nervous system, and they understand, wow, I can stand up from the support and stability of the backside of my body, that feels really good. Also is reclaiming or regaining the arches of the feet, making sure that the foot is alive and doing its job. And most of the time, our feet are flat, like a flat tire in a car, because of excessive shoe and sock wearing, living in our modern society.
Yeah, and more dependence on these, quote, supports, that then we're weakening ourselves and limiting our own ability to navigate through life. Yeah. And it sounds like what you're saying, when I combine your story of how you got here with what you discovered about the anatomy of true support, free and vital support, it sounds like one misperception a lot of us have is that you can just pile muscle on top of something and it's going to work. But it sounds like if you get this banana body thing wrong, it becomes a war of piling more muscle on the front, and so you pile more muscle on the back, and you can be locked in a suit of armor almost, in trying so hard to, quote, be healthy, if it's not around this idea of purpose.
Yeah, it really is. Movement is the foundation of us, and we want our foundation to be really, really strong. We want that foundation to have us strong in the very beginning of our life and with us until the very end. And if the foundation breaks at any point, meaning your joints or your connective tissue or the actual structure of your body gets damaged, it's very difficult to heal and regain those things. So the primary focus should be, let's make sure the foundation is really, really strong, and then let's keep it strong. The predominant thought process in creating a foundation is based upon the muscle model today.
Exactly.
So it's not based on like the skeletal model. It's not based upon movement. It's based on muscle model. And this thought is that if you have more muscle, you're going to be stronger. But if we look at a building has a foundation. It's a big cement flooring with pillars. And from that foundation, then you can build out drywall, you can build out walls, you can build out the aesthetic of the building, and you can make that building aesthetically beautiful as much as you can, or minimal and small and frail. But even if the foundation is really no good, no matter how much support structure you put around that foundation to make it look like the most beautiful building, when the storm comes, the building is going to fall, no matter
Gonna
how
go.
much support you have.
I talk about when we've already damaged our soft tissue, and yet not turning that into a determinist. Oh no, I give up. And a lot of people my age, especially, we were athletic when we were young. You can't feel when you're overstretching, and you often don't know when you're doing soft tissue damage. So what about when we're managing a difficult situation? When What about if you're starting where the foundation is off and there is some kind of pain or injury?
Hmm. Well, the first thing that we want to acknowledge is that if you have pain in your body, that it is not a lie. That is your body telling you something. It is an objective truth that you're experiencing, which means something is asking, your body's asking for something to need your attention, to be managed or to be tweaked, aligned, or changed in some type of way. That is a direct communication from your body that is requesting for you to make a movement, to make a change on what's happening. This is really important because since we were young, most of us we did the opposite. We stopped listening to our body and we were programmed to ignore these voices. For instance, if you take a child and you put them in a chair, after 3 minutes, 4 minutes, they're going to start squirming around. They might get out of the chair, and then you have to tell them again, hey, sit back down. And if you tell them, stop listening to your body and do what I tell you and go sit down, that's the right thing for you to do. We start planting those seeds of there's a right way to behave, and the things that my body's asking me to do are up for debate. They're up for question. And so you say, I have to go to the bathroom. So a normal person in a normal circumstance has a impulse from their body. Their body communicates to them through sensation. Hey, it's time for us to have a bowel movement. It's time for us to go to the bathroom. Then a normal person would just take that, and the moment they had that very first initial feeling, would fulfill the request from the body. But just like in school, it turns into, is now a good time for me to go use the restroom? May I raise my hand? May I do this type of thing? So there's a lot of rules and ways in which our logistical lifestyle impedes with the communication that we have with our body, including pain. You wake up and you have pain. Your body is, please address this pain. Maybe your low back is tight or your hip is tight, but you're like, hey, but I'm at work. I've got 4 more hours and I've got to focus on this task at hand, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have time right now to listen to my body. And so what can I do to help myself? I can take some pain relievers. I could do many other things that are going to suppress the language of my body instead of honoring it.
Love you're saying pain is real. It's irrefutable. It's the truth, and it's actually a gift when you listen to it, just like other symptoms, rather than vilifying them and trying to avoid them and numb them out. They just come crashing back later if you haven't addressed the system. And it sounds like that's what you're saying. When
Yep.
90% of our energy is consumed in how we relate to gravity, if that one relationship is way off, it just gets exponentially harder
Yep.
to live the life you want. So let's talk about we're listening to the pain. designing strategies to unlock what movement solutions are healthy from that point. I mean, I'm guessing you'll say go back to the basics, get the foundation, reset the foundation.
Yeah, you're right. You hit the nail right on the head. It's going to be go back to the foundation. And so it's very important to acknowledge this as well, that let's say I have pain or I have tension in my body, but then if everybody looks back on their first 0, 1, or 2 years of their life was for the most part relatively free of pain. You weren't walking around with like a chronic pain, but there was a lot of movement that was happening. You were strengthening your body on your stomach, doing tummy time, or lying on your back, or just rolling around. And then you started to crawl around your house or your environment. You started to slowly start to stand up until you could walk. So there's this initial mastering of the basics, of process of human development that we know extremely well, that there are processes and stages of development that we all have to go through those levels. And if we miss some stages, then our body is going to have trouble down the road. So when we do have trouble down the road, if anything does arise, some kind of pain, some kind of tension, that is not an acute stressor, like you did not have an acute injury where you got hit by a car or something bad. This is just like you woke up one day and your back was tight. You woke up one year and your left shoulder has been tight all year, and your neck or the front of your hips. These are chronic things that just kind of stick around, that emerge out of nothingness and don't necessarily have a full picture as to where they came from or why. The invitation then is to go back to the original place and to start from ground zero, which is the ground. Come back to the ground. Come back to lying on your back. Come back to going on your stomach, to being on all fours and being okay to crawl around for a little bit, especially if walking is hurtful to you, and then slowly building up to being able to walk and to run. This is the whole process that I do with my company and with my clients, is re-engaging with that initial natural process that we all take ourselves through. And it's a process that anytime we have a 100% open invitation from our body to re-engage with that process of learning, re-engage with that process of healing.
And may I say, a lot of people in the last 100 years, the what we typically would have gone through as children, where there was a certain amount of a relationship to the ground and less restrictive chairs and less time in school and less time at the computers, there's a lot of movement, kind of like developmental pattern interruption going on the way things are. In fact, I learned this interesting thing that when the government declared that all kids in the United States need to go to school a certain number of hours a day and sit in a chair, there was a huge uproar. The parents were like, that's torture. No, we're not doing it. So it was required by all teachers to teach posture. And if you look back at pictures of kids in schools in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, they're very grounded with their biomechanics are really good. But then what happens? We have infant car seats with the tails tucked under. We have a fear of the dirt on the ground. We have like kind of this, it's now, it's a crisis, especially because at least I was old enough to run around barefoot and play in the mud. And we've lost touch. So, I find people think I'm sort of silly that I am all in on investing and moving better. They're like, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. The hip surgery is free. It's covered by my insurance. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
pain free tomorrow. I'm 56 and I'm like, no, that means I'm doubling down. I'm
Yeah.
doubling down on my commitment, because the most priceless thing you could feel to age well is the ease and joy of movement. So, can you talk a little bit about any of that in your own life or your client's life, where there's the question of what does investing in this way of reprogramming your movement, what are the trade-offs and payoffs?
I think at the end of the day, the question for everyone is like, what type of experience of life do you want to have? And it's not like, oh, a good one or a bad one. It's like, no, what do you want to experience? Do you want to wake up and be able to go run? Do you want to wake up and go play in the ocean? Or do you have hobbies that you want to maintain? Would you like to play with your kids and not feel fatigued or tight or anything? Or is the experience of life you want to just be kind of lounging all day? And when your hip starts to act up, you've got the medical industrial complex that can cut you open and give you a brand new hip and give you a brand new knee. And that's okay for you. Same thing with nutrition. Do you want to have a life where you're feeling like super energized by your food, super healed and vital, that I'm getting so much nutrients? Or do you want to exchange that for, well, whenever I want, I can just go right down the street to a Burger King or a Taco Bell and I can get food in an instant. And I love that I can just get yummy and delicious food that maybe isn't the best for me at all, but it's instant and it's whenever I want it, or I can, can just get that delivered to me. um, every one of those actions and decisions that we have are going to either bring us closer or farther away from the experience of life that we want to have. So by asking ourselves, what experiences do I want to have with my personal movement, with my physical body, for however many years left I have on the world, what do I want to experience? All of us have our own internal desires for the different experiences that we want. And if we understand what are those experiences, how do you want it to feel, those experiences, then we can start to reverse engineer, are the decisions that you're making today and right now, and is the state of your tissue and your physical body and movement, is it capable of having and giving you those experiences and enjoying them with you? Or is there some growth, some changes, and some reconstruction that we need to do so that you can have those types of experiences?
And let's that word reconstruction, that's one of the reasons I call my show The Architecture of Health. It's the possibility of a remodel. It's the possibility of regenerating and redesigning, and whether it's your external environment or the soft tissue and your bones and fascia. So what I find is sometimes I'll just trust that something is quote healthy. Then I overly invest in it because it's called quote healthy when it
Yeah.
turns out at a certain dose to become quite toxic. And you've already kind of alluded to, at one point you were always very invested in fitness and health, but at a certain point it wasn't getting you what you wanted. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about what people think is healthy that's actually not, or that's actually reversing their freedom, or it's disempowering at a certain level? I know sedentarism, like we've talked about, sedentarism adds up. Lounging around adds up. Standing causes
Mhm.
you're standing more like a banana shape. But can you think of anything else that's actually been called quote healthy that is doesn't have that positive of an impact?
Yeah, compound heavy weightlifting, compound movement heavy weightlifting. And majority of the movements that we do in a gym setting are more destructive on our movement in our physical body than they are helpful for our movement in our physical body. And
Like,
that might,
does that mean a
uh,
deadlift, or what is that?
a
Yeah.
deadlift would be the biggest example of that. Most of your powerlifting, so barbell back squatting, bench pressing, and deadlifting, can be extremely damaging on the body when done in frequently, and for long periods of time.
And to add to that, I'm pretty sure you've probably invented a live lifting. That's probably what you've started to do instead of deadlifting. And it sounds like you're and it's probably multiplanar, spiraling and all that. And but the are there very many traditional strength practices that you kept in your personal
Um,
practice?
no, the only practice that I've kept is practicing resistance training. So it just is knowing that resistance training is so healthy for the body, so healthy for our muscles, chemicals for our brains, for our hearts, for our emotions. But how we go about doing resistance training is extremely important. We all know that there's a million studies on the benefits of resistance training, but nobody is talking about how are we getting there. The barbell, for instance, was created not because it is the best way for us to do resistance training, The barbell was created because it's like fast food. Instead of having hundreds of rocks and stones or sandbags and other objects for us to engage with resistance training, here's one object that's very thin, very small, and you can have just one set of plates, and they can all stack really nicely in the corner, and you can do all the things that you want with that, instead of like having an entire warehouse full of different objects and different weights and different sizes and different whatever. You get one thing, and it's very efficient. It's the fast food of resistance training.
It, yeah,
It wasn't.
versus
Yeah.
the organic. And if we think about our evolution, we were building stone walls, digging the different sizes of stones out of the earth. We were moving, kettles of, you know, kettles of tea and buckets of milk, and it's all got a much different rhythm and variability than our, and yet I've seen some of your powerful coils that you build with your clients pushing things like sleds. And I see in your Instagram, your awesome Instagram feed at Bam Lionheart, right? That's your Instagram? I see in the background that you're in this gym-like environment at times, and I see weights, and then you're applying a different vector. You're putting the forces through your body in these coils. And then I see you taking up parkour and jumping off of giant things and surfing. So variability, but it came from this first principle of foundation. Like you get the foundation, you use these resistances to fortify it, and then from that comes more capability across many movement disciplines. Great. Well, we're nearing the end of our time, but I really want to know what are some immediate first steps that people listening can do. One is I heard you talk about go from banana standing to back chain enlivened standing. And I'm pretty sure that's in the free course you offer on your website, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Is primalmovement.org. You have a free class there. So I'm going to take that class because I love your work. Any other first steps you recommend for people listening?
If you are somebody who really is invested in your health, the state of your physical body, and especially if you have a family, I would highly encourage you to look at your living environment and to see how many places in your home you have the ability to rest and sit and be on the actual ground, not on a couch chair or a dining room chair or a small sofa or armchair, but do you actually have space on the floor for your children to lay down, to move about, or even to crawl? Is your home only cement and there's no soft surfaces? Is it only wood and tile? So your feet are constantly in this hard thing. Are there any soft surfaces where you have the option to come back to the ground, to sit on the floor, to lay on the ground? That is the biggest piece of advice that I would love for people to just look at.
Wow.
A lot of my clients, after our work, start to have a different relationship with something like the couch. And they recognize, after they've learned to listen to their body again, that, wow, after laying on the couch for an hour, my hips and my low back feel worse than when I got into that couch. And you can imagine all the different postures that we have in the couch slouch. And changing the couch for something like lying down on the floor with your legs up, or even just being on your side on the floor, sitting cross-legged and just moving about the floor while you're resting, as opposed to slumping in one position for prolonged periods of time. The couch is, to me, an ironic enemy number one. So getting people and inviting people back to the ground as a safe place it brings me so much joy, and I'd like people to have it.
I have a question. Are you a ground sleeper? Or are you a bed sleeper?
I believe in options. So ground, hard cement, bed, and then hammock.
Oh, hammock.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because it swings and moves?
It swings and it moves. You're in the sky, the air. So I've had like the Tensile is the company, large hammocks that are like an elevated platform floor that you can put outside. My favorite sleep is in this large hammock, which is like a floor that's kind of bouncy, but you're sleeping outside and you have all this room to roll
Wow.
around and you're 10, whatever, how many feet off the ground you want to be. Best sleep I've ever had
Wow.
in
Oh
that.
my God. I've got to investigate. I've got this warehouse so I could have all this open floor space, but
Hmm.
I've been a floor sleeper for most of 10 years. And even in Italy, I remember it was so hot, I slept on the stone and I could just cuddle. And, once you get your design, you can find the soft pads of your body to put against the ground.
Hmm.
But once your design starts locking up, less and less feels comfortable, and it took me a while to transition to just loving the hard ground. But not funny enough, I recently re-injured my hip, but it was after a couple of weeks when I was sick. I was traveling in soft couches. That had to
Mm.
have contributed. Okay, well, I think that's a perfect way to end, is you took us right back to the idea that you can set up your environment to encourage healthy outcomes. You can
Yeah.
you can you can pick specific movement practices, like, but it's still architectural. You're rebuilding the architecture of the foundation of your body, restoring the soft tissue so that your whole body is a symphony of transmitting forces through it in the grace of gravity, rather than this resistance and stuckness fighting what is. But then you carried us all the way through to reminding ourselves that we have a choice about every single thing we put in our built environment. Wow. So where can my listeners get more of you? Primalmovement.org is one. Your Instagram is at Bam Lionheart, which is great free information. YouTube, you've got a channel there too. What's your YouTube channel called?
YouTube is also Primal Movement. You look up at Primal Movement, um, and there's a bunch of free information as well as follow along workouts and movements that you can do with me to get started on a movement practice.
And I recommend, though, the website having that very focused intro, that it's got a free, like, 10 or 11 lesson class about the base foundations. Oh, and also, guys, if you're a runner, I highly recommend Bam's movement analysis. He looked at my running in slow motion and showed me I was in fact running backwards, even when I thought I was getting better at running forwards. Okay, any last things you want to say?
Yeah, well, if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of time, doesn't have a lot of energy, doesn't have a lot of space, we are told that you have to stop your life, go to the gym for an hour or two, and do something else to support your body. When in reality, most of the support we can do is by living the same life that we're living right now, just with more awareness and a little bit better choices. Like if you watch TV at the end of the day, can you watch TV on the ground instead of on the couch? If you're laying on a really big, comfy bed that's 12 to 18 inches of thickness of comforter, can you drop it down to 7 or 5 inches and you can sleep on a bed that's a little bit more firm, a little bit more
Firm.
helpful for your movement? Same thing with shoe wear. Are you wearing shoes that are helpful to you? Um, there's so many ways that we can support our physical body without having to stop our life, go to the gym, or engage in a physical movement practice. If you're somebody who is short on time, so to speak, it is no excuse, but there are so many ways that you can make your life feel really good. And the last thing that I want to say is that there's a difference between normal and common. And right now, many people, it's very common to experience back pain, hip pain, foot pain, shoulder, all of these chronic pains that stay with us. It's very common, but common, it's not normal. It is not normal for us to experience those things. And I personally believe that the human body is physically designed to be pain free for an entire lifestyle, entire lifetime. So if you do have those common ailments, know that it's not normal and that there is another option for you on the other side.
It's not normal in human history. It's not normal across cultures that have a different lifestyle. Yeah, and Bam, thank you so much. I can't wait to take more of your classes. Namaste.
Yay.
All right, bye.
Bye.